Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 200 of the MTGGoldfish Podcast. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and I'm joined today by Richard. How's it going today, Richard?
Hey Seth, what's going on? I just moved. We were scrambling to get this podcast ready. Nothing worked after I moved. No internet, nothing. So it's a miracle that we made it to episode 200 today.
It really is. You had trouble on your end with your internet, and then my computer was having issues, but we made it. It's episode 200. We've overcome the hurdles, and we're going to have some fun today. So we were kind of debating what to do for this milestone episode, and we decided it would be fun to kind of reflect a little bit, take a walk down memory lane, talk about some of the history of the podcast, some of our good predictions, bad predictions, funny moments. So we have a bunch of clips from old episodes that we wanted to play and discuss today. So that's going to be most of the podcast. And then, of course, fish mail. We can't get even on episode 200. We got to answer the fish mail. It's a tradition. A good way to start off our next 100 episodes. So that's our plan for today. Walk down memory lane. But before we get to it, I have a couple of reminders for everyone. First off, the sponsor of today's show is spikesacademy.com, the world's first e-learning academy for Magic the Gathering, and their online courses are created by some really amazing Magic players like PVDDR, also Reed Duke, so you can check them out over at spikesacademy.com and even get 10% off if you use the code GOLDFISH. And to learn more, you can check them out on spikes_academy on Twitter. So thank you so much to them for their support. Also, we have some exciting news as well. Over on the merch page, in celebration of episode 200, we have a playmat specifically for the podcast, MTG Goldfish Podcast playmat. So if you're looking for a way to support the podcast, support the site, head over to the merch page, check out the sweet new playmat. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that as well. So with our reminders out of the way, Richard, I think you're going to kind of take it away. You got the clips over there, so you're going to be in charge of playing them, and then we'll discuss them. So why don't you take us down our walk through memory lane?
Yeah, so this is episode 200. Now, if you do some basic math, that's over 4 years of podcasts, Seth. I didn't realize we've been doing this for 4 years.
Actually, I don't know if your basic math holds up there. I think that is slightly less than 4 years, actually. But,
wait, what?
But there's 52 weeks in a year, so almost 4 years.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you got me. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, there's one podcast a week. That's 50 times 4. No. We had some weeks where we missed the podcast and took a break or something. I'm sure it's been more than 4 years.
That's insane. That is really crazy. When we started this, none of us, I don't think, really knew. This started with an idea from Chaz, I think, was the one that initially pitched the podcast back in the early days of content on Goldfish. And we were like, yeah, that'll be fun. Like, have a podcast. That's a cool idea. But at the time, who would have guessed? I had no idea that we'd still be doing it over 4 years later. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners who've been listening to us for 4 years. I know there are people that message me occasionally say, I've been here since episode 1. And I'm like, wow, that's insane. You've heard all of our audio issues. Some of these clips we're going to play back. The audio is really bad. We still have audio issues. Like literally 10 minutes ago, none of this was working correctly. So, it's a miracle that we fumbled our way here. It's like we got tackled at the 5 and just fell forward. And then the tip of the ball crossed the plane of the end zone. Like that's what's happening here. But we're here. Oh my God, 4 years. So, Seth, you talked about this a bit, but we started the podcast with our original host, Chaz, who's no longer with us. He actually messaged me and, he said, hey, do you guys want to just make a weekly news podcast and we can talk about finance and what's going on in the world of Magic and things like that. And, I was like, sure, I guess I have nothing better to do. And then, we got some mics, some terrible mics, and then we recorded our podcast. And here's episode 1, and I'm going to warn you guys, it sounds like a TED Tech Talk, a business presentation. It sounds really bad. Here you go.
Hi everyone, this is Richard from MTG Goldfish. Today I'm excited to share with you guys our new MTG Goldfish podcast. It'll be a weekly podcast where we highlight the latest Magic the Gathering news. It'll give us a chance to give you an in-depth look behind some of the numbers on the website, provide discussion behind the articles, and provide a general platform for interaction between the fans and people behind the website.
Oh boy, I read that script well, didn't I?
Oh, you nailed it. It was like an infomercial, word for word. Oh my god! If I had heard that, I don't know if I would have kept listening. So thank you to our fans for sticking with us through our first intro.
That was serious, Richard. When he had a real job and he had to give like PowerPoint presentations day in and day out, like that was it. That was the podcast PowerPoint presentation. Oh boy, but you're not much better, Seth. I have some early clips of you. We're gonna find out.
Oh no.
But one of the biggest misses we've had on this podcast was a little blue mage by the name of Jace VP, and that's the Flipwalker Jace. And we all thought he sucked. We thought all of the Flipwalkers sucked. And after we put that out in the public, Jace went on to terrorize Standard. He was played in Modern quite a bit at that point in time, right? He's kind of fallen out of favor now, but he was basically the Teferi of yesteryears, and we missed big. So this is what we had to say about Jace.
We're gonna devote a 15-minute podcast to how bad Jace is.
A whole 15 minutes, and I think Seth, you dominated that with some of this.
Well, I think we'll probably cover most of it as we talk about the Planeswalkers, but I kind of just go through step by step through each Planeswalker and explain why they suck.
Yeah, I was not high on Jace or any of the Flipwalkers. Actually, I think I was most high on Kytheon, which ended up being like probably the worst or one of the worst of the Flipwalkers. I will never live that down. No matter, we could be doing episode 400 and you will still be playing clips of me saying Jace Prince Prodigy was bad.
So he was so bad that we just dismissed them on the podcast. Like, we didn't even talk about them in detail. So if you really want the nuances of why Jace was bad, you got to check out the article. And I don't even know what the article was called, Seth. What do I search? Like Jace going to school, MTGGoldfish?
Something, yeah, sending the Flipwalkers to college or something like that. I've tried to block it out of my mind. So
that was a good article, Seth. Why don't you write like these kind of like situational comedy articles like that was your like Saved by the Bell going to college themed finance article? What happened?
I think one of the weird trends about the podcast and also my articles is kind of a general trend away from finance to some extent. Like, we still talk about it to some extent. I still do articles about it on some extent. But if we're listening back, like, that's one of the things that I was reminded of with these clips. We used to be a very finance heavy podcast. Do you remember we would do like every week the movers and shakers, and that would be like a huge chunk of the podcast was like price movement and stuff like that. And we just kind of drifted away from the financial aspect. So
yeah, I think it was very different back then because no one knew much about finance. Like, for example, now that you shouldn't pre-order during spoiler season, that cards will be inflated and that people will open packs and it'll get cheaper, and we know when around rotation to sell things. This wasn't as apparent back then, so we had to talk about it more. And Wizards didn't reprint cards like crazy back then either. So you had to really be on your feet to figure out when you should buy into Modern. I remember like, is it Modern PTQ season coming up? Prices are going to spike. These things, like, to a certain extent are not as important today. Either everyone knows them or Wizards has, reprinted enough stuff that at any moment in time, like, stuff is getting reprinted. So it's not as crucial to track those things.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting how I think the community in general has just our knowledge has moved forward so much about financial stuff, where stuff that seemed like a big deal when we were talking about it 200 episodes ago now is just kind of common knowledge that everyone knows.
All right, so CVM couldn't make it today, but did you know that he was actually a guest 150 episodes ago on episode 50? Which actually turned out to be episode 52, I think, because we were late on it. Here's CVM.
Yes, it was been pointed out in the chat. Someone who needs no introduction. Chris Van Meter's in the house. What is up, Chris?
Hey, how's it going?
So that's Chris. That was Chaz, followed by a lot of echo.
That was one of our only live episode. We decided for the 1 year anniversary, we were going to do a live episode of the podcast, and we had a bunch of guests on. We had Chris, I think we had Wedge from the Mana Source as well, if I'm remembering. There might have been someone else who I'm forgetting. That was kind of fun. Maybe we should do a live podcast again at some point.
Where did we even do it? Do you remember? Did we even have a Twitch stream or YouTube channel at that point?
I actually don't remember how we did it. I don't think we had a Twitch channel, or else maybe maybe that's how the Goldfish Twitch came to be. Maybe we created it to do the live podcast.
Wasn't it like Google Hangouts or something? I'm actually kind of curious now.
Oh, you might be right. It might have been Google Hangouts. Is that still a thing? Do Google Hangouts still exist 150 episodes later?
Yes, it does, and it will exist another 150 episodes into the future. So, predictions. People listen to us for predictions, and after reviewing the data, maybe they shouldn't. we have a lot of bad predictions on the show, and the bad ones are funnier than the good ones. So let's hear some bad ones. And because Chris was a guest, and because Chris can't defend himself, we'll start with Chris.
Gabriel asks about Dredge. Do we ever see a viable Dredge archetype in Modern?
I don't think so. Unfortunately. Scavenging News is so good.
Well, in defense of Chris, when we were recording this, I'm pretty sure things were a lot different. Golgari Grave Troll was banned before it became unbanned for a time. So that was one of the big changes. There was no Creeping Chill. There was no Cathartic Reunion. So a lot has changed since Chris made that prediction. But yeah, that is pretty hilariously wrong looking back on it, when Dredge is one of the best decks in Modern, and people are again talking about maybe eventually having to ban something from Dredge.
Wow. Do you remember a time where Dredge was not in Modern? That was episode 50. It's like The Matrix or something, and we're going back in time. Like, remember when humanity was good? Like, wow. Like, there was a time in Modern without Dredge, and all you had to worry about was like Splinter Twin and like Deathrite Shaman. But now, like, you die on turn 2 and 3 no matter what.
The good old fair days where it was like Jeskai Control versus Jund, and Modern games lasted more than 4 turns. Oh man.
Oh, all right. Seth, what is a deck that currently is not good enough today in Modern that 150 episodes from now will be rampant?
Oh man. Oh, that's so...
What's a fringe card or mechanic that we're always like, this has to be good, but like there's just not enough pieces to it?
I think so this isn't predicting the future, but another good example of that was Vengevine was always a card that was not quite good enough, and then all of a sudden you get hollow ones and you have these Bridgevine decks. I'm trying to think of a combo that's just not quite there, a mechanic that's just not quite there, but with like that one piece printed, all of a sudden it's going to be the top deck in Modern. It's got to be an unfair broken deck of some kind. Maybe like Heartless Summoning is a classic example, I think, of a card that I always feel like it's one good card being printed away from all of a sudden being a really good and powerful deck in Modern, but we never get the card that makes it happen. So I'm going to say Heartless Summoning. It's probably not a great prediction, but prove me right, future, 3 years from now.
All right, I'm going to say Control. Control has been the laughing stock of Modern for so long, right? And you're like, why would you play Control when you die on turn 2 or 3 anyway? You got to close out games, that you can't control everything in Modern. And WotC will eventually print that card that is like too broken. Maybe it's Brainstorm. Maybe we already have Jace, right? Maybe they give us Counterspell, but they'll eventually give something to give blue decks a leg to stand on. I think they'll accidentally do that.
Well, while we're predicting the future, I have a couple questions for you, Richard. So shoot ahead, 150 more episodes. Banning wise, will Tron still be legal?
I think Tron will always be legal.
They'll never ban it.
Will
What
it
about
be good?
Dredge?
No. Will it be good? Will be different. I think you will always be able to assemble the 3 Tron lands to make 7 mana. Whether they ban out every good payoff or they ban out like Expedition Map or something like that, or Sylvan Scrying or something like that, maybe. But I think you can always do it. It's an iconic part of Magic. Dredge will be gone. I think they don't want Dredge anymore. Although Creeping Chill says otherwise.
What about Storm? Will we see another Storm banning in the next 150 episodes?
Will Finkel be playing Magic still? If yes, Storm will exist. They clearly like it. They clearly like it. They did not need to make Goblin Electromancer in Standard. They did not need to make Baral Chief of Compliance. They keep putting these cards and telling people, don't make Storm decks, but here are all the Storm pieces. But I think they will be slightly different. I think they actually won't print rituals anymore, but they will print cost-saving cards, which allow you to storm off.
All right, and one last one specifically for you. 150 episodes from now, what tier will Jun be? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Where will Jun be 3 years from now?
Tier 1. The green power creep. Eventually we're going to get a Tarmogoyf that's like a Siege Rhino. It's a 2 mana. It starts at like 2/3, okay? And then it gets +X for each card type in the graveyard, and it does a Lightning Helix on ETB.
Oh, that would do it. That would make Jun.
And then when it dies, it leaves behind like a beast token.
We're gonna clip this, and I'm gonna replay this for you on episode 300.
It will totally happen. Okay, what do you think by episode? Let's say by episode 450 or 500. What does a 1 mana creature look like? Like the beefiest 1 mana creature.
I don't know if it's gonna. I'm gonna say it's not any better than today. Like maybe we'll see more utility stuff. Another Deathrite Shaman type thing will slip out potentially. But I think if you look at the baseline, is like maybe Wild Mikado, 1 mana 3/3. I think that'll still be the baseline on episode 400 or 500.
I think we'll get something better. I think a 1 mana 4/4 is doable, or maybe like a 1 mana 4/1 or like 5/1 or something, or like a 4/3 with first strike. We'll get something ridiculous. There's no way, it'll be something like wait, hold on, wait a minute. This is all wrong, Seth. We already have a 1 mana 12/12.
I don't. Yeah, I guess.
Wait a minute.
I guess that is true. So we're already wrong, and we haven't even made it past episode 200 yet.
Like, my guess is they'll make like a 0 mana Death Shadow with lifelink, right? So like as soon as you hit someone, it dies, and then the people will find some way to like make it not symmetrical, right? Because Death Shadow is like, well, if you want a 12/12, you got to go down, so much life, right? And people clearly won't do that. And then people found ways to abuse that, right? So I think they'll make a big creature at the downside, and then we'll just find a way to remove the downside.
Yeah, if there's one thing that we've learned about Modern is if it has potential to kill people by turn 3, people will find a way to use it, no matter how bad it seems.
All right. So talking about the future, this is a perfect one. Fast forward to episode 100. Frontier was the rage. Frontier was the rage. Have a listen in.
Give me your quick hot take on Frontier.
Ooh, I'll go first. Frontier is happening. Okay. It will be a thing. Definitely, maybe not immediately, but I think in a year it'll be a pretty popular format. So Seth, what is the most popular deck in Frontier at the moment? Because it's definitely a thing.
I think it's so much a thing. We recently took it off the metagame pages on the website. So I have no idea, honestly. You could still be right eventually. Your time frame didn't actually work out. Within a year, it's been, 2 years since that episode. So the time frame didn't work out, but I think maybe within the next year, by episode, let's say 250 or 300, I think you will actually end up being right.
Yeah, I actually still stand by this. They're gonna have to break up, the Modern. Modern is getting too big, and with Arena, we will eventually get some format that's quote unquote eternal on Arena, where you have to be able to use your old cards after they rotate. So I think Frontier is starting where Arena started. So I think eventually it will become a thing. The question is, can we predict the time frame? Is it 2 years? Is it 4 years? Or do they bring back something weird like extended instead?
So I think it'll happen by this coming rotation next fall. Whether or not, on Arena that is, how long it takes to actually catch on in paper, that's a whole nother question. And I think with Modern, every time we talk about bannings and stuff, I end up feeling silly because there's just so many broken decks that I'm almost starting to come around to the idea that the way to quote unquote fix Modern is just to like make a new smaller Modern, and then it's going to take another 10 years or something for the format to get so big that it's degenerately broken, because I don't think you could like ban or unban Modern into a fair place. So I think you just got to enjoy it for what it is, and then hopefully also enjoy this new Frontier style format that will be coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural evolution of things, right? Like you start off with only one format, right? And then they made Standard, Type 2, and then eventually Power 9 was too hard, so they fractured off Vintage and Legacy, and then Legacy was too big, so they made Extended and Modern. So there's always this like trying to make formats smaller. So we will eventually have to do something with Modern.
The unfortunate part, because Arena starts at Kaladesh, or maybe their Shadows over Innistrad might be on there. It's not really known. There's some cards or something, but let's say it starts at Kaladesh. The unfortunate thing is Kaladesh block was the most broken Standard block, so you're going to start this new small Eternal format with Aetherworks Marvels and Smuggling Copters and Smugglers Copters and just Sahili combos, all these broken things that had to be banned in Standard. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that. Maybe they just start with all the cards that were banned in Standard on the ban list for this new format as well.
Yeah, I mean, either way, if the card pool is too small, you're going to end up with one of our old standards. So I think Arena will get it immediately, but before they try to push it to the paper crowd, I think they want enough sets under that umbrella so that the format looks unique and you're not just doing some weird flashback Standard to Kaladesh.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think about the Extended idea? Do you think, is there any chance that that's actually the solution, the return of Extended in another like bigger rotating format? Or are you just expecting some sort of Frontier non-rotating format?
I think players can only stomach one rotating format at a time. I would have no desire to build an Extended deck knowing that it's going to rotate eventually. So I don't want to see another rotating format, especially when the cards are old and more expensive to get.
And that kind of ruins things on Arena to some extent, because the whole reason to have this format is so your cards always have use even after they rotate from Standard. So you just kind of create another problem if they rotate eventually from this format.
All right. So speaking of broken cards and emergency bans and whatnot, what kind of kicked it all off was a spaghetti monster from what is the set? Shadows?
Emrakul was Eldritch Moon, right? It came in the second set. I believe it was Eldritch Moon.
All right, let's hear what I had to say about our friend Emrakul here.
Interesting, Richard.
It's okay. I'm not as hype as you guys.
It's okay. Hold on, wait. There's a follow-up.
This Emrakul is Standard playable, and it will be good in Standard, but I don't see use cases in Modern, Legacy, Vintage, etc.
I mean, that's mostly correct. I've seen a couple stragglers in Modern when it comes to Emrakuls, but for the most part, I don't know if I've ever seen one in Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I came from a place where I was comparing it to the 15-15 Emrakul, and it's just so much better, the old one, right? But this Emrakul went on to dominate Standard, get the emergency ban, just invalidate every deck ever, because if you haven't won by a certain turn, Emrakul was coming down and wrecking your face, and taking someone else's turn turned out to be a very big deal, which we all underestimated. Except Seth, maybe. Here's what you had to say about this.
All right. Well, as far as the card itself, I think it's pretty absurd. Like, this card is going to be really nuts in Standard.
Huh?
Yeah, I was incredibly high. I think I wrote an entire, 5,000 word article about how insane Emrakul was as soon as it was spoiled, and that's one of the predictions I'm actually kind of proud of. I kind of nailed it with Emrakul. it's kind of funny looking back on that. The thing that it reminds me of most is Wizards and their design of formats. Like, one of the big problems that made Emrakul so dominant is that was the time period where Wizards decided that they hated hate cards of any kind. So they printed Emrakul, and there was literally no graveyard hate in the format. None. Not a single card that could deal with the graveyard. So everyone was casting like 6-mana Emrakuls. And while that was painful and we had a ton of bannings, we're seeing kind of the payoff from that rough period where we're kind of back to normal, I think, where we again have ways to interact with the graveyard and stuff like that. So I feel like Wizards, they went really too far in a weird direction, but they did learn from it. And now we're seeing that pay off with a pretty fun standard in Guilds of Ravnica standard.
Yep. But rest in peace. Like, if you go further back, right, they did rest in peace and like these really hateful cards. Right? And it's like, as soon as you slap it down, like, it's game over for the other deck. So they said, okay, this is like too hateful. Let's go with none whatsoever. And then Emrakul happened. And then now we're at the, okay, here's some like kind of okay. But it's interesting because that has repercussions for Modern. Cause like, I don't think we're going to see like a rest in peace type card again, unless it's in the Modern Master set we're talking about, where they make new cards specifically for Modern. But like these really hateful cards, like rest in peace, like what's an artifact hate card?
Stony Silence.
Stony Silence. Like, notice how they're all from the same time, right? Like, Wizards just like, whatever, guys. Like, we'll just put in all the hate. But now we don't really get that much. Like, we don't get that much new tech for Modern sideboards with new sets.
Oh, I got another question for you, Richard, for our future prediction. So, we're at episode 200. Let's say by episode 300, will we have a set or a product that is putting new cards in Modern without going through Standard?
Yes.
I hope you're right. I'm going to say yes, too. I'm not super confident. I really hope that's what happens, but I'm going to agree with you and say yes, because that would be so sweet.
100%. And the question is, how format defining do you think these cards are? Because like when they make cards specifically for Commander, they're really good, right? Like when you buy any of the Commander products, there are some pretty good staples in there. So when they release these Modern products, is it going to warp Modern immediately? Like, are they all going to be fatal push type cards where all of a sudden everyone needs to play this, or you need to consider when you build your deck, about these cards? Or will it just be random filler?
I think that's the risk. I mean, because Wizards, they test a lot of Standard and a lot of Limited, and Modern is kind of further down the rankings for testing, so there's definitely a risk that we would get something really busted if they do go that direction, but I still think it would be worth it. It would be so sweet.
Yeah. We skipped some Planeswalkers. There is some good Narset in here that we didn't talk about. I remember Narset, but we do have another Planeswalker, the new Jace Mind Sculptor, if I remember correctly. Let's see.
I think she'll be good, but I think people have overhyped her. I don't know that she'll be even the best Planeswalker in this set.
Chandra's okay.
Huh? We were like kind of okay there. I remember everyone was saying Jace, and we were all coming off the big burn that was Narset, where everyone also claimed she was Jace.
Chandra ended up being, I think I was the harshest on Chandra. I don't know if we have a clip of it, but I'm pretty sure I was I don't think I said, it wasn't like a Jace Friends Prodigy level disaster of predictions, but I think I was pretty it's alright, whatever, it's fine. So I think I missed hardest on Chandra. Yeah. And Narset, oh man, I just remember Narset for maybe 12 episodes, maybe even more. Maybe it was 16 episodes in a row. And this was back during the finance days. And we would always talk about the biggest winners and losers. And our set, I swear to God, was the biggest loser from $70 down to $5. So every week, the biggest loser for 4 months was Narset.
Wait, so what have been the worst Planeswalkers we've seen in 200 episodes? So Narset's got to be up there.
Yeah.
Tybalt's bad, but everyone kind of knew he was bad.
New Jace, Cunning Castaway, maybe, might be on the list.
Oh, but we all memed him to death too.
That's, yeah.
They don't just make bad Planeswalkers anymore, or deceptively bad. I think
Yeah, there's some that don't work out. Maybe like Arlencord. I remember, like, I think Chaz was super hyped for Arlencord, and then Arlencord never really did anything. But she wasn't bad in an absolute sense. Like, she was still okay. I think some people played her as like a one of in Jund or something, but she never really. There's some planeswalkers like that never really reach their spoiler season hype or potential. But it's hard to really call Arlencord like a bad card in an absolute sense.
Oh wait, Sarkin. Wasn't Sarkin like never played?
Oh, not the new 3-mana Sarkin.
No. He had blue in it.
The teamer.
Yeah.
The teamer. Yeah. Sarkin. Yeah. I'm glad we didn't find a clip for that one, because I'm pretty sure I said, I think I remember my exact quote. I think I said something like, Sarkin unbroken. It should be Sarkin broken. and then it never saw play.
Oh, just put that up with Underworld Cerberus. Like cards we thought were good that never saw play. But there are some planeswalkers that turned out to be a lot better and format defining that, you know, we either said we're good or like didn't go crazy on, like Karn, Gideon. Like these planeswalkers that dominated Standard.
Teferi. I think we were sort of like meh on Teferi.
All right, I got a treat for you, Seth, for Teferi. So I think Teferi will be, you know, okay to, you know, he'll be playable, but he's not going to dominate Standard or anything. We've seen this kind of planeswalker before. You heard it from me. Not dominant in Standard. Not like there was a stretch of time where people are only playing Teferi as their literally only card that can win the game in their deck.
Yep.
I severely underestimated the power of untapping those two lands. Like when Teferi was dominant was when you could play Teferi plus and then have 2 mana to seal away an incoming threat, right? Or counterspell or fog or anything, right? Like that 2 mana untapping was so ridiculously broken. And the fact that he was a win con in itself, that you can just tuck him, like just put him over the top, that people didn't even need to play finishers. And total miss on Teferi.
Yeah, we definitely underrated Teferi a bit. But I think like kind of everyone did it first, or at least many people did it first.
Yeah. I don't know, Wizards is pretty good at making planeswalkers now. So anytime we see a planeswalker that looks kind of playable, it's probably going to be good.
What about Jaya Ballard? I guess she didn't really look kind of playable at the time, and she hasn't been kind of playable.
But we kind of knew that, though. We knew that it was like a combo planeswalker. Oh, what was the Saheeli? Saheeli sucked.
Ooh. Yep.
But
and I mean, Saheeli did kind of suck, but then they printed Splinter Twin in Standard.
That's what Jaya needs, right? It's like, wow, this card clearly sucks until they print like the exact card you need to combo off with. Like that's kind of Jaya, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we'll still get it. There's still time. We have a couple more sets before Jaya rotates.
All right. So Kaladesh block was like the most broken block in quite a while. And Smuggler's Copter we talked about on the cast.
I think this card's too good. It seems really good. Like any creature you just randomly play now is a 3/3 haste looter on the first turn. So, you know, the fact that you can loot and the fact that it's a 3/3 flyer makes up for the fact that, you know, it's a vehicle. And I think it's really strong. Crew 1 is a really low cost. So I think you'll see a ton of decks with this as a 4 of.
Got there. Got him.
You absolutely nailed it with Smuggler's Copter. It's good enough that it still sneaks into Modern every once in a while, and was obviously bannably good in Standard. So, good job.
Oh.
That's why people have tuned in these last 200 episodes for nuggets of wisdom.
Yes,
like Smuggler's Copter is good.
You just gotta sift all the bad ones away. You know, if you make enough predictions, some of them will be right and some of them will be wrong. You just need to select the right ones to play back during your 200 episode anniversary to make yourself look smart. So yeah, but Copter was really good. I don't know what Wizards was thinking. Copter is really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just wanted to make sure vehicles were playable for their first run, and they went way too far.
Yeah, so they figured this all out, and then they thought, okay, we're gonna fix vehicles, so they made Heart of Kiran.
So when you tweeted this out, Richard, because we all kind of had our thoughts on this over social media, you were really excited about this card.
Yeah, I think it's insanely broken. I still do.
When I first saw it, I was like, wow, that's like a 2-mana Sierra Angel. This has to be really good. But after thinking about it more, I'm pretty sure this is just like not strictly worse, but generally worse than Smuggler's Copter.
I think that's probably
That
true.
is true,
I think
yeah.
Smuggler's Copter was actually better, but then it got banned, and Heart of Kirin was pretty dominant as well. Man, I forgot how good Mardu Vehicle was for such a long time. That was like for almost a year. That was one of the best decks in Standard. Ugh, vehicles. Well, now we get horrible, absolutely unplayable
yes.
vehicles
And then-
to make up for it.
Oh, what was the last vehicle? The Weatherlight. The Weatherlight died for these sins. The Weatherlight is supposed to be like the greatest ship of all time or something. And I don't even remember what it does. I don't even know what it does because it was that bad. I haven't even played it in Commander.
Yeah, it's not very good.
They should have just made Smuggler's Copter the Weatherlight. Then everyone would love it. Oh boy. So vehicles, big mistake. Energy, big mistake. I don't think we have any clips on energy, but energy was a big mistake. What else happened during that time?
I think pretty much just Kaladesh was a big mistake.
Yep.
in general.
So after that, we went to Amonkhet, and then we got the gods, and here's a little clip on Hazoret.
I mean, it's cool to see what the gods are going to be like. They're not devotion based, but they do have a kind of a pseudo devotion ability where you have to meet some condition to actually turn them into creatures. I know they're technically creatures all the time, but functional creatures, you have to do something. I think people are going to be surprised at how difficult it is in a typical deck to be hellbent or even just have one card in your hand. It seems like it should be easy, but a lot of times if you get yourself into that position, you either have to be like winning the game right away or you're going to end up losing because you have no cards in hand and your opponent does. So I think that you need a really specific deck for Hazoret, but I think in that deck it can be very strong. I guess I started off really bad, but it was very strong in more than just a specific deck. Yeah, I remember being pretty down on Hazoret and then dying to Hazoret very many times playing Standard.
You were punished by the Amonkhet gods for this blasphemous statement here because Hazoret was a terror in Standard, so much that people asked for a banning. But eventually the metagame shifted. She wasn't as good. We got the exile effects to get rid of her. And it wasn't as bad, but it was still totally worth, right? Because you can just chip in a whole bunch of damage with Hazoret. I don't have the clip, but I'm pretty sure I was pretty high on Hazoret. I don't know if it was off the cuff comment, but I always thought that Hazoret was always undercosted. And getting hellbent in red isn't that difficult.
Yeah. Well, you were right on that one, and I was pretty far off.
But I'm not good at predicting gods because the next god in line to dominate Standard was...
Yeah, I think it's good enough to play by itself. I don't know that you would use it as a control finisher or something. It seems not good enough, but in a mid-rangey deck. But blue and black are not typically mid-range colors in Standard.
Oh, I was about to ask you, Seth, which god do you think I'm talking about? And then the last part gave it away.
It sounds like Scarab God to me. I'm pretty sure I was excited for the
you
Scarab
like
God
Scarab
right
God.
away.
I thought it was too slow. Turns out that you could just reanimate everything and stabilize, no problem.
So what one do you think was worse in Standard? Which was more annoying, Hazoret or Scarab God?
Scarab God.
Yeah, it probably actually was Scarab God. They were both pretty annoying at their peaks, but Scarab God felt so unbeatable. Like man. I remember just the nightmares of your opponent playing a Scarab God, and you're just like, oh, okay, I can't win.
Yeah, you need to answer it immediately. If you're a bit late in answering it, like you're in trouble, and it's hard to answer because it comes back to your hand and you can just play it again. And then you have these all like, I remember watching the pro tours and stuff. Like there's just all these weird shenanigans you can do where you like exile another scarab god or something and like make tokens, or, you know, there's just all kinds of weirdness you can do. And it makes the games last forever. Like scarab god mirrors, like, oh dear. At least with Hazoret, it's like over in 5 minutes, right? Either someone's dead or someone's won or something, and it's just done with. And we do have cast out and things like that to deal with Hazoret. So it's not like the end of the world if you miss it. It's, you know, miss for a turn, right? You just take 5 damage to the face.
Yeah, there were some grindy long matches with 2 Scarab Gods going. Oh, that, and you like couldn't activate yours because you had to leave up your activation to fizzle your opponent's Scarab God activation. Oh my god, it was something else.
Yeah. So that's all the clips we clipped. We try to think of some of the cool cards from past standards. We went through a lot of broken standards looking at this. So standard currently is in a much better place when you take a look back. Modern, you reminded me of time before Dredge. I kind of want to go back to that time. I want to go back to the time of Deathrite Shaman, Bloodbraid Elf. We actually had a lot of standard modern changes throughout the podcast. Right? Like, we had a lot of unbannings. Golgari Grave Troll became unbanned. Jace became unbanned.
Yeah, Modern has undergone a ton of changes. New cards, creating new decks, Hollow One, Hardened Scales, the Rise and Fall, and then Rise Again of Dredge.
Death Shadow.
Death Shadow.
Fatal Push.
Now we're seeing Fatal Push. Arclight Phoenix is the new one. We'll see how much that actually sticks around, but that's the new hotness. And yeah, I think right now, I would say out of the entire history of the podcast, Modern is probably below average right now, I would say. On the other hand, out of the entire history of the podcast, I think Standard is very much above average and one of the better places it's been during the course of the podcast. How would you rank our current formats against the history of the podcast?
I think you're right there. I think Modern is worse, Standard is better. Or Standard's kind of the best it's been, and then Modern's kind of the worst it's been. And Legacy, I don't know. It existed more back when we started the podcast because we could talk about Sunday coverage of Legacy. Haven't seen much. Vintage, the same. Commander has gotten huge over time. I remember the early episodes of the podcast, every spoiler season was like, wow, this card sucks, but probably playable in Commander. And it was before Commander Clash. Yeah, this was before
we didn't even know what that meant. We would just say it if it was big and expensive because none of us actually played Commander at the time.
Yeah, and then we started Commander Clash because we're like, oh, we should learn something about this format. And turns out not every terrible 10 CMC card is playable in Commander. Very little, very few are, but yeah. And then we saw Pauper rise. We saw. Oh, how about the rise and fall of formats? So Frontier.
Oh, Tiny Leaders.
Tiny Leaders was the original Frontiers. Oh boy. Oh, we should have got some Tiny Leaders clips. We totally forgot about that.
Brawl. Oh, that was a Brawl. Yep. Is that a fall now? Is Brawl on the downswing? Is that where we're at?
I don't know that anyone plays Brawl. Does anyone play Brawl? WotC themselves have stopped trying to promote Brawl.
Yeah, I think it's kind of. I mean, maybe some people play it. The everlasting image of Brawl will be that the guy that showed up and was the only player to reg for the championship and was the champion because he actually signed up for the event.
Yeah, I just think players can't handle rotating formats. Like, I don't have time to keep up to date on like 10 formats at once, right? Like, even Standard is like too much, right? So like adding in Brawl, having to manage that. Like, I like my EDH deck because 5 years later it still works, and maybe it's not optimal, but it still works and I can still play it, right? So that doesn't happen with Brawl.
So let's jump forward. Excuse me. Let's jump forward 200 more episodes. Modern. More popular than today, less popular than today.
Hold on. 200 episodes forward. Will Magic the Gathering exist?
Yes.
Will people be playing it?
Yes, I think Magic will be doing fine 200 more episodes from now.
Bigger
Even
or
better than
smaller?
today. Bigger.
Okay. I certainly hope so, because the other question is, will there be episode 400 of the MTG Goldfish podcast, or will we be working at Walgreens?
That is a good question. I'm hopeful that we will be doing episode 400. Walgreens does not sound super appealing compared to talking about Magic, but
as long as Magic is still around, we'll be around. And, we can talk about Magic as a whole, right? We survived Hearthstone. Did Hearthstone release before or after we started the podcast? It's gotta be after, right?
Probably around, maybe, I think around the same time, maybe slightly after.
So we survived Hearthstone. We're probably surviving Artifact, right? Artifact has fizzled.
Magic Arena.
we have Arena. We had V3. We had V4.
Yeah, digital Magic. I mean, I think that's
Duels
the
of the
biggest
Planeswalker.
reason. Yes, the death of Duels of the Planeswalker. I mean, I think Arena is the biggest reason to be optimistic for... I mean, there's other reasons as well, but I think that's the biggest one to be optimistic for 200 episodes from now, Magic doing really well.
All right, so 200 episodes from now, will organized play look the same?
No.
So will we congregate in weird cities around the world, slightly outside downtown areas to reduce costs, and play Magic at the highest level with the highest pros?
All right, my hot take prediction that we can look back on and laugh at 200 episodes from now is that there won't be Pro Tours, at least in paper, anymore.
Ooh.
By the time we get to episode 400. I think maybe GPs or Magic Fests, like those type of gatherings with a more casual bent, those might still be doing something. But I'm gonna say that Premier Play is done in digital, most likely on Magic Arena. Who knows? Maybe there's some other program or game that they're working on that could change things in the next 4 years, but that's my hot take prediction. 4 years from now, no Pro Tours.
Here's my hot take prediction, Seth, that paper Magic will never die, that Arena will be gone in 4 years, or it'll be a different thing altogether. But in general, I think Wizards, I don't see them ever going away from paper, and that they'll keep it around the entire existence, that the Pro Tour will still exist. Secondary hot take, Pro Tour payout will be exactly the same as it is today. It hasn't increased in the last 10 years, right? And it won't increase in the future. What they'll do is split off Arena, have their own esports circuit or something. We're about to find out next week, or I guess this week, with the organized play announcement for Arena as well. But I don't see them killing paper Magic. I think they're going to force people to play with physical cards. I don't see them actually going digital and killing everything.
And what about Magic Online? My prediction is it keeps chugging along with its however 10,000 players or whatever number it has. 4 years from now, Magic Online will still be a thing.
4 years is a long time. I don't know that I think Magic Online will be around, but maybe we're on V5.
That would be interesting.
But there's no way they would spend money to make V5, so I don't really know.
If they could just port over the good parts of Arena and you could play Legacy, oh boy, that would be sweet.
we ported over the economy. That's it.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know. Magic's gonna be. It'll be interesting to see where we are. Another 200 episodes is 4 years in the future, so I don't even know. Maybe there'll be a new iPhone or something. We won't even be talking about mobile phones. We'll be playing with stuff in our eyes.
Yeah,
VR.
Virtual reality.
Maybe we have to actually throw fireballs at each other.
That would be interesting.
It becomes Yu-Gi-Oh! We just show up and then we pull out our deck of cards.
Well, I don't think Magic is going anywhere in the next 4 years, or probably even longer than that. So I'm pretty confident that Magic is going to be doing well. I'm more interested in specific formats. Will there even be any Legacy tournaments 4 years from now?
There will
Will
be.
Modern still be will Modern still be anywhere near as popular and supported, or are we all playing this postmodern format that is presumably going to be created? That's the stuff that's going to be really interesting to see.
All right, hold on, wait. So talking about Legacy. So 4 years from now, at Vintage, what is the price of Black Lotus?
Oh my, I don't even know what it is now, honestly. It's going to be... so let's go easy. It will continue to go up. It'll be higher.
Okay, I guess the second part of my question is, will the reserve list still exist? And based on your answer, you think yes.
I think that even if it didn't, the original Black Lotuses would still keep going up, just as collector items. They might actually go up more if Black Lotus was reprinted. But I'm going to say yes, the reserve list still exists. The way I see the reserve list going away is if Magic starts to do poorly and Wizards just wants to cash out as much of their equity as they can. And with Arena and the hype surrounding it and where everything's at, Standard improving, I'm feeling pretty good about the future of Magic. So I don't think in the next 4 years Wizards is going to get into panic mode. We got to get rid of the reserve list.
All right, I think I agree. I think reserve list will still be around. I think Black Lotus will be like $1 gazillion, and it doesn't matter. The question is, what much is Underground Sea?
That was the exact card I was going to say. Jeez. How high can it go? $1,000 a copy?
What is it at? Didn't it like hit 600 or something? Like what are we at? I don't even know what we're at right now.
I'm looking it up. A revised Underground Sea is currently $602. Actually, I guess it spiked for a while up to like 800, right. And it's trending back down.
Hot take: it'll be $2,000.
Man,
because we said the same thing. Like when we started this podcast, Underground Sea was probably $100.
Yeah. Looking back as far as our price chart goes, which is, well, I guess that's 2010. Well, when do we start? Okay, so say 2013 we started the podcast. Yep. 180, let's say.
Yeah.
Between 150 and 200.
And we were
depending
like,
on what point in the year
wow,
you
that's
choose.
so expensive. How much higher can it go? And they're like, haha, look at it now, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, if you go by that, it's tripled in price since we started the podcast. So if it tripled again, that would be $1,800.
Yep.
In $6.
Yep.
If we want to be exact.
All right, $1,800.
So Richard,
$6. Write it down, Seth. Write it out. I might as well just put the price in the graph right now. So when you comment on the MTG Goldfish website, you'll see that we have a trajectory.
So are you going to go buy some Underground Seas, Richard, and then retire in 200 more episodes when you're Underground Sea wealth?
Knowing my luck, I'll accidentally buy counterfeits or something. Like, it's just so difficult. You need to go to some special guy with like a loop and like a flashlight and like the bend test, and like it's just so hard that it's just so hard to buy old cards now.
Yeah, no, that's a good
point.
Like,
can you imagine buying a car? Like, you go to like a Civic dealership, and then you get home and you find out it's not a Civic, it's like a fake Civic. You're like, what? What happened, right? Like that's what's happening when you buy like a Black Lotus or something now, right? You got to be so careful.
Yeah, that is definitely a concern. And that's another interesting question. How good do you think counterfeits will be in 200 more episodes? Like, by that point, do you think we'll be to the point where there's literally indistinguishable counterfeits? Or do you think something will happen where the problem or the benefit of people counterfeiting is less and it becomes less of an issue?
I think the old cards are counterfeit proof, because I think it's really hard to make, and I don't know that it's worth it. Like, let's say let's say humanity's fate rested on the ability to make counterfeit Black Lotuses. I'm sure we can turn one out like next week, right? But if you're Joe Schmo in your basement trying to come up with the new illegal business, I don't know that it's worth the time and money to do it. However, I'm going to say that there's probably real counterfeits out there that are really good. You just can't tell. Right.
Yeah.
And it's only the bad ones you can tell. And the bad ones know they're bad and they're not trying to look good. They're just trying to sell at like, a small rate, right? Like, when you buy a fake handbag or something, a lot of the times, like, it's just clearly fake, but it's not tricking anyone, and they're not trying to make it look good because it just takes too much effort. So they're just, here is 30% of the product. So I think we'll continue to get those kind of counterfeits. And the really good ones, probably no one can tell right now.
I mean, it seems like if you could make indistinguishable Magic cards, that's probably like roughly as good as being able to make indistinguishable US dollars. Like, I think you might actually be better off.
Oh, I would hope not. I would hope
cards.
US dollars have a little more security than that. But yeah, right. It's really expensive. But like,
I mean, the risk is so much less. Like, you get, oh man, if you get caught making fake money, you get all kinds of trouble. But if you get caught with fake Underground Sea, like, what is there even any punishment for that?
Yeah, that's the intern project. You show up at the mob headquarters, you're like, hello, mafia. I'm here to work. They're like, okay, your first task is to make a counterfeit Black Lotus. And if it passed the light test, you can go on to making USD. Like, yeah, that's what happens. But I'm almost positive, like, say you're a factory. Say you work at a factory, kind of like that sheet that someone stole. What set was it? Ixalan or something? Where someone stole Ixalan, like a full foil sheet. Like, after the lights are out, you just print another couple thousand print runs of some card and then just like take it with you. Right. So it's like made at an authorized place, but it's not, given to WotC, right? So it's actually the same card, but it's illegal counterfeit, right?
Yeah, I don't know what you do about that. Then, I mean, it would be just as real as any other card, except Wizards didn't have a hand in it.
Yep.
Wow. Crazy times. Well, any other predictions or thoughts here, Richard? Episode 200. Also, are we fish mailing, or are we just gonna go with this?
Maybe we'll do one fish mail question, because we can't have an episode without fish mail. But it is our 200th anniversary, so we need to make sure we get all the predictions in so we can use these clips for our 400th anniversary.
We have some good ones, and they are probably... one last prediction. How many of our predictions do you think will actually be right?
0. That's an easy one. Yeah. 0.
I think we'll get one. One of our crazy predictions will probably be right. Hopefully it's mine and not yours, but we'll see.
But yeah, it's just so crazy thinking 200 episodes ago, 4 years ago, everything was so different. Us, your voice, my voice, the website, Magic itself, the community. Remember, Magic was not as big back then, right? We've had the largest growth period of Magic. Like, I don't know, it seemed like every set was the most sellingest set for so long. So many people have joined our game, right? So just everything is so different since 200 episodes ago.
I like to think that is attributable to our podcast. It's such a great podcast. We've caused the game to grow at unprecedented levels over the history of it.
That's it. 30 years from now, when scholars look back on the rise, there's going to be a Vice article on the rise of Magic the Gathering, and they're like, there is this MTG Goldfish podcast, episode 1. That triggered all of this. We must find these people. And Seth is like in some cave on some island with like a handful of blood moons. They like track him down. Interview. Wait. Yep. He's like Obi-Wan blood moon.
Oh God. All right, Richard. So, what's our fish mail? Give us a good one.
I'm trying to read all the fish mail we have to see. Oh, okay, here's a good question. So we'll do the rest of these fish mail next week, because I don't want to miss them, right? But Ronald Foster Jr., happy 200th episode, guys. What's been the most challenging part of making the Goldfish podcast, and what's been the most rewarding part?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So for me, and it's much better now, but traditionally, I had all kinds of issues with internet. Do you remember that from the early days, how horrible my internet was?
How did you fix it? How do you fix internet?
I moved. I moved to a location with better internet.
That's dedication, my friends. That's dedication.
Yes. So that was the biggest challenge, although that's gotten much better since I moved to a place with respectable internet. The most rewarding part, that's a good one. I mean, I like to think that what we talk about is helpful to the community, and it helps people get into the game and stay in the game. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong and it doesn't, but that's what I'm going to go with. I think hopefully we provide a service to the community with the podcast that is actually beneficial to people and also entertaining, hopefully.
Yeah. So the most challenging part of the Goldfish Podcast is the audio. We need like a real audio person. I remember the first episodes, like we would have like, we would lose audio. There would be echo. There would be, you're recording from a toilet today. Maybe we still are. And just like every week there was like just something random. And like we had no idea what was up with it. It was just randomly do weird things. So making the podcast, just actually making it was very difficult. The most rewarding part, I think you talked about it, Seth. I think just being able to talk about Magic every day. Like maybe you live in a place where you don't have a lot of friends in real life that play Magic, right? So being able to come on the podcast, share our experience with you guys, and talk like we're all kind of like a big group of friends is pretty cool. And then when we go out, I know at Grand Prix Vegas, it was actually pretty fun when people came up to me and said, "Hey, you're Richard, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, right." It's like, "Oh, I listened to every episode of the podcast." I think that's pretty cool. So just sharing kind of the everyday Joe aspect. Like we're not pro players. You can tell, we can't even predict cards correctly, right? We can't tell you the most optimal lines and things like that. We're not Hall of Famers, but just being able to talk Magic with your buddies and having people listen is pretty cool. And I do hope that we did help grow part of the community. I'm going to take credit for like 0.01% of it. Someone listened to the podcast on iTunes or something like, "What is this game? They sound very interested in it. Let me go to my local game store and try it out." I'm going to say at least one person has done that. And if you have, leave a comment.
It was probably someone who was looking for like magic tricks or like actual magic and stumbled across our podcast and then got hooked.
If you're an actual magician and you started playing Magic the Gathering because of us, let us know in the comments below.
Oh man. Well, I think that does it for episode 200 of the MTG Goldfish Podcast. Anything else on the way out the door today, Richard?
No. So it's been a fun 200 episodes and hopefully 200 more. And we get to do this again. Maybe we'll make a shorter milestone. Maybe we should do like episode 300 instead.
Or like 201.
201. Join us next week as we celebrate again.
Well, thank you to all of you. Seriously, like, thanks for hanging out, Richard, but thanks to the audience. It's because of you that these 200 episodes have been possible. So thank you for being so awesome. Thanks for listening and hanging out each week. Definitely appreciate it. And with that in mind, if you are looking for a way to support the show, reminder, we have the new podcast playmats available over on the merch store, so you can check them out there. And one last shout out to the sponsor of today's show, spikesacademy.com. You can get 10% off at spikesacademy.com with the code Goldfish. So thank you to them for their support. So again, Richard, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. This has been episode 200. We will be back next week with episode 201. So until then, have a wonderful week. And this is the crew signing out.